Start recording.
Right, good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is July 12th, 2022. The time is 7 o'clock. And this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees of Buena Vista. Paula, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Fay,
Here.
trustee Cobb. Here. Trustee Hildenhinga. Here. Trustee Jenkins. Trustee LaCretzi. Here. Trustee Rowe.
Here.
Trustee Swisher.
Here. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't think anybody's here for public comment in the chairs. We are going to have someone on Zoom, and we will get to that later. So, Paula, you haven't seen anybody sign in?
Not yet. I'll check that in just a moment.
Okay. So the next item on our agenda is agenda adoption. Does anybody have any items they'd like to discuss or change?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
We have Rowe and LaCretzi. All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have the consent agenda. Generally, we approve this as a whole. And I wanted to point out that a couple of things that are in the packet are covered in this consent agenda. They being the sale of a lot over on Belden, which is a lot that's owned by the town. And then a couple of other projects that are on Main Street for which the developer or builder of a new property has to pay the public improvement costs. So those things are in the consent agenda. Does anybody have any comments or changes in the consent agenda? Have a motion to approve it?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Commissioner LaCretzi. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So the next item is public comment. And is there anyone on there?
There is no one on our list.
Okay, great. But we have somebody on Zoom.
Few people.
Okay.
Right. Mike, you want to move up Kate and Becky?
Yeah, Kate, you should have access to talk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and trustees. My name is Kate Garwood, and I am the chair of the Chafee Shuttle Board, excuse me. Anyway, what I'd like to tell you is that we found some really interesting results from the HOPE grant, which is helping obtain prosperity for everyone, regarding what the town of Buena Vista wants for transit services in the future. One of the most important things I think you should know about is the housing transportation quotient. And I'm teeing you up, Becky. I know you're down online here too, but the housing and transportation quotient should be 45%. In other words, housing and transportation should total no more than 45% of the average household costs. In BV, that average household cost is 57%. Just to give you an idea, you can find these calculators all over the web, but I don't care whether you're driving a 72 Datsun or a Ford F-150 from last year, you're spending between $7,500 and $17,500 a year on your transportation costs. So specifically as to the town of Buena Vista, these are the things that The survey that we did, we did 2 surveys, but 2 times in Buena Vista, but here are the results of the surveys from Buena Vista. The citizens would like us to work with large employers in the region, such as school districts, government offices, and Heart of the Rockies Regional Medical Center, the Correctional Complex, Monarch Mountain, Walmart, and Mount Princeton Hot Springs to coordinate transit mobility services. They want us to apply for grant funding for sidewalk and bike infrastructure improvements in coordination with local partners. They want us to develop and implement local circulating routes from Buena Vista and encourage remote parking that would be per the comprehensive plan. And they want us to work with CDOT to plan and implement mobility and micro-mobility infrastructure, in other words, bus shelters, transit services, and service information, and to expand to include more options for folks. And the last is they'd like to have some special event charter services for things like Wolf Creek or special events that come up. One of the biggest things that's been consistent is getting Buena Vista to Salida and getting Salida to Buena Vista as well. So those are some of the things you're going to start hearing about from us at the Chafee Shuttle, and we are going to actively look for grant funding to meet those 5 needs in Buena Vista. We need partners for helping with the matching funds. Usually it's a 20% match to an 80% grant, but maybe that'd be 10% if we have a Buena Vista to Salida, give them 10% and get 10% from you folks too. But we'll bring those opportunities to you. So I'm sure I'm done with my 3 minutes, but I wanted to start talking to you about these things so you're not caught by surprise and you can start planning them into your world as well.
Thank you, Kate.
And we have Becky Gray on as well for public comment. And Becky, you should be permitted.
Very good. Hello, Mayor and trustees. I hope you are able to hear me okay. Thank you for opportunity to speak with you briefly this evening. I just wanted to come back and give you a little bit of an update on how the Chafee Housing Authority's analysis of a tax measure is panning out. You might remember that my board member, Mika Rosenauer, and I were with you some weeks ago to explain our analysis up to that point. And this is just an opportunity to update you and to prepare you for our next step. So the committee that was formed to evaluate this potential tax measure has decided upon property tax as the best avenue to sustainably fund housing development and rent stabilization efforts. They have yet to decide how many mills is going to be associated with that ad valorem tax. There is a special meeting of the board tomorrow, and that's where that decision will be made. I'm also excited to tell you that our housing needs assessment update is almost complete. It's still in draft form. Joseph has weighed in on that. Very appreciate his input. And that housing needs assessment is really clearly defining the number of units we need built in each jurisdiction and in each income bracket, even down to unit size and whether it should be owner occupied or renter occupied based upon our data projections. Those 2 things coupled together give the Housing Authority Board of Directors and myself enough confidence to move forward with this tax initiative. You might remember that our next step would be to ask all of our participating member jurisdictions to pass a resolution supporting the Housing Authority placing a measure on a ballot. So it's not necessarily asking you to support the overall measure. It's asking you to support allowing the public to vote upon this measure. And you should expect to see something in your next agenda packet in a couple of weeks from us with a full memo, lots of data and information for you to digest ahead of time. And then we'll present that resolution at that time and ask for your support. But between now and then, I just wanted to say, please reach out directly if you have any questions or concerns. I will mention that we did hear a concern across the board about reimbursing some property owners for that property tax, should they meet some criteria. And we're evaluating the best way to move forward with that. So thank you for your past input, and I look forward to future input. Feel free to reach out anytime. I will leave my contact information in the chat.
Thank you, Becky. And thank you for giving us the detailed information in advance so that we have a good chance to look at it rather than the weekend before our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay. Well, then we're ready for staff reports. That's you.
Yay!
The man who wears- The man who wears so many hats now.
Here we go. Right, so my report, administrator report, starts on page 71 of your packet. And I'll just hit a few highlights. One on upcoming things or upcoming key dates. So we did get the part 2 of the emergency response training scheduled for July 25th here in the Pinion Room. So I look forward to wrapping that up. And for anyone that missed the first session, no excuses, you still get to come. So, but I appreciate people that can attend. It'll be good information. I think this next session will dive a little bit more specifically into roles and responsibilities during an emergency. And so hopefully, will be a little more applicable to all of us. So, but looking forward to that. And then at the next meeting, just as a heads up, I'm going to go ahead and do a presentation on the 2023 budget to get that process started. And I put in here a start of 6 p.m. as a work session, but given that we've got other things possibly going on that night, I'll probably just do it during the regular meeting. So I'll give an overview of the process and some assumptions, such as like how we project revenues, things like that. And then some of the key or some of the priorities and focus areas that were identified in the spring planning session with the board, just as an opportunity for all of us to look at that together and go, oh, that looks about right. Or hey, what about this other thing? Right. So that way I can take that back to staff as we're crafting the draft budget, and it can help give us overarching areas to focus on. So that will be at the next meeting. It's amazing how many events we got going on, because I realized that this past weekend had several other events since I wrote this memo, but a lot of town resource goes into these events, and we had some good discussion with you all last time about, hey, do we look at new policies or ways to continue supporting great events, but possibly doing some policies to protect our capacities and things like that. So just to give you a little more context specifically into the July 4th series of events, and also to recognize the contributions of our staff, I went ahead and put in a little bit of detail in the memo for you to see, because a lot of times, we talk about, it's the Chamber's event or it's American Legion, and that's true. And they are putting a lot of effort into those things. But none of those events happen without your town staff. And so we every year we do give a cash contribution to the fireworks, which is great. That's been $5,000 for several years now. But you can see all of the specific people that spent the weekend and holiday working long shifts, both for the parade. Well, I should back up, planning, preparing, getting things in good order, then participating and setting up very early, starting at about 6 a.m., getting ready for the day's events, running security during those events. And then after a very long day, getting out there and directing all the traffic that's involved with the fireworks. And that's pretty much our entire police staff and fire and Public Works and actually a few other people as well. So I just wanted to take the time to publicly recognize the people that I've listed here. I know I'm sure I missed a few people, but there's a lot that town puts into these, and that's a good thing. These are important events to our community, but not many people talk about what town's contribution is into these things. So kudos to the department heads that lead these teams and on the staff that carry out what they need to do. So thank you to all of them. Let's see here. Another thing that's coming up at the next meeting is I will give you a presentation on the salary, call it salary study, but a mid-year look at where our pay plan is at. We were talking about inflation, and I'm receiving input from different municipalities around the state about what they're doing, so I can show you what different places are doing that are comparable size and activities that we have here. But give you a few different options to consider because it is a very important topic. The board's been very supportive of staff salaries, things like that. But it's not a decision to make very quickly, especially mid-year, because it could have long-term impacts on our budget. So I'll present to you all some options to consider with that. Let's see here. Maybe we'll put it up. All right, so later on tonight, there's the update to the IDA. That's just a little bit of context, but we'll cover that later in the meeting. The heads up Becky just gave you, but she'll be here in person next meeting to talk a little bit about the Chapin Housing Authority and their desire to put a ballot question on the ballot, I should say. Let's see here. We did provide you all with a quick update around the rodeo grounds master plan, and we identified that there were some issues with the annexation and some of the property. Just to let you know that we had a pretty productive meeting with them. Joel, good Adam, and so they're addressing the issues. So that's a good thing, and possibly by next meeting it'll be to the point where we are comfortable bringing that plan back to you all for motion. So
Great.
good news with that. We have a groundbreaking, we'll call it a photo op more than anything. Since it's an interior remodel, there's not that exciting shovel on the ground necessarily, but next Tuesday, we will have a photo op in front of the new police station. I think several of our police officers will be there and some other staff. So you all are welcome. We've invited the mayor. We're hoping that the newspaper can make it out there and take a picture of it. Important milestone to celebrate, kicking off quite a project. All right. We had to throw in some water complexity here just to keep the brain chewing on all the topic of water. So we are moving forward to stipulate in one of our open water court cases that we were an opposer in. It wasn't our case, but we were an opposer to the case so that we could be involved and see the outcome. And so it's good practice for this to for the board to be aware of these actions. And so Joel, if you want to say a few words about what stipulating means. And why it's important.
Just to expand a little, it's part educational, part informative here, because there's so much to water that anytime we can interject a little bit in here. So there's a water court, whenever there's a municipal change or a point of diversion change or something on Cottonwood Creek or the Arkansas, our water attorneys catch wind of it. There's a publication every month. And if it's anywhere near us, we oppose it. If you file an opposition, then you have a voice in what happens. And so if we were to take a water right through court case as well, there'll be all sorts of opposers. Everybody opposes. And then over time, people kind of drop out. And for us, this was a little particular, it's Cottonwood irrigating ditch, which is right kind of by Darren Patterson Christian Academy, comes out there and it goes down through the prison grounds, you know. Anyway, it's an upper arc, water right, and there was some complexity to it, and what is that for consumptive use and how they're measuring and various things, and it took a couple of years, but eventually our attorney and their attorney decided, hey, let's change this little word, and it's a Latin thing that I'm sure Jeff Parker knows all about, and I don't. And that was it, cleaned it up. So we stipulate, meaning we kind of remove our opposition and they can continue on. The idea is everyone stipulates before you get to the actual trial, and you save a whole bunch of money before you even get to the trial. So that's the idea. I think we were one of 15 opposers, and maybe we were one of the first to stipulate. So anyhow, so this is just a simple formality thing that you know, our attorney signed, and then the upper arc board will sign, and we move forward. And if it was a little more complex, we would bring it back for you guys to, you know, to review and that kind of thing. So that's stipulation. And I don't know, I think we're always opposing something, but usually there's no real point to sticking it out. But this one, we wanted to stipulate, you know.
Can you give a quick definition of historic consumptive use
Yeah.
for some of our newer board members?
So the water is measured, you know, let's say we have 3 CFS of water that is used for irrigation. A lot of that water is lost through the ditch and eventually makes it to the river. Some of that water evaporates off. Some of that water just soaks into the ground at the point of application and makes it to, you know, into the aquifer, wherever it might be. Some of that water is absorbed by the plants and is removed with a thresher or a cow, and that plant, whatever water those plants took, that is historic consumptive use. And that is what, like if we were to convert to municipal use, that is the amount of water that we can actually keep and use, and all the other water is really becomes someone else's because it wasn't used, it went back to the aquifer.
So the evaporation piece, that would not be considered consumption use, even though it's not being used downstream?
I think there's some, it gets really complicated. I think some of it would be, no, I don't really think so. And there's also return flows. You have to like manage for when the water gets to the river and make, add the water like in January to the river instead of in the summertime when it's applied.
Mm-hmm.
It gets very complicated, but that's basically what it is. Generally, 1 acre of crop is about 1.5 acre feet of consumptive use. In this case, there was some discrepancy. It was like 1.36 or whatever it might be. So that's where that. Yeah, I don't know if that really answers the question.
Yeah, dude. My understanding of it previously was just like what's consumed downriver essentially. And so that's why you mentioned the evaporation. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's really whatever the plants pull up is what you get.
Gotcha.
So whatever water went somewhere else, if the plants didn't pull it up and you don't have those ag records of what was consumed, then you don't get as much.
And household use is not consumptive use, right? Because you use the water, but you send it on down the drain.
Well, that's, yeah, you get some credits, but that's also gets into, we're talking really an agricultural right to convert it to municipal use.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it wouldn't be that, yeah.
Anybody else?
I hesitate going too far down, because we're gonna talk about some of the stuff later.
Yeah.
This evening too.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I'd like to thank the staff for a great 4th of July weekend. And it was just so special to walk around and have people be so delighted by being able to be together again. You know, to have the parade and the art in the park. This was very nice, the fireworks. Okay, so let's see, is the treasurer here? Yes.
There's gonna look a lot like the town administrator.
Make it or? Yeah, it's my first treasurer report. Looks a lot like Michelle's last one, but for a while I'll continue using her format until I'm comfortable with the numbers and everything, but I did double check most of the numbers in here just to make sure. But I guess notable updates, we did receive the deposit for our second ARPA payment. That's the second and final. They split it in half, so $360,000 was deposited, which is great. And as we've been talking about, I think we'll continue to hold that as a restricted fund balance in our general fund until we kind of see how Carbonate Street continues and our water plant expansion. And then the board can consider specifically how we allocate those dollars when we get closer to those coming to completion or getting into construction, I should say. And then we finally, thanks to, again, Joel cracking the whip again, we got our grant reimbursement from CDOT for replacing all of the Main Street lights last year. So that was just shy of $150,000, so that's great. And the rest of the report is kind of the standard report for the first meeting of the month. Next meeting will be the sales tax report and some other details, but this one just kind of shows since the last meeting what expenditures we've had, what payroll looks like, and then expenditures over $2,000 to the tax. I will take any questions. Sorry.
We mentioned this, I think, the last meeting, we've seen an increase in sales tax compared to last year. But have we taken into consideration or controlled for inflation? So we've had an increase in sales tax, but have we had a decrease in purchasing power of that revenue coming in? Mainly thinking about when we're looking at the salaries for that next.
It's a huge part of it. I've been a part of discussions that are considering partially why we're seeing an increased sales tax is from inflated prices, and therefore higher percentage return or higher dollar amount return. And then yes, everything on the expense side is getting higher, is being impacted by inflation too. So I will be taking a very conservative approach to things like revenue projections and also things like salary changes. So yeah, that'll be kind of reflected in that presentation. Yeah.
Other questions for the treasurer? No, thanks. Thank you. So now, Chief Morgan, are you on?
I sure am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and trustees. Thank you. I'll jump right into my report. We conducted our active shooter training at Buena Vista High School on June 22nd, and then we did a second one on June 29th. We usually do those in the summertime when the school's available, and we appreciate the school district allowing us to use their facilities. And we have a large scale exercise that's happening next week. And that's also going to put our active shooter response protocols to the test. Most of the first responder and second responder agencies in the county are participating in that. And we're really excited about it. There's at this point probably about 100 people involved. The Chaffey County Sheriff's Office, EMS, Fire Department, Sol Vista is going to be involved, DOC, State Patrol. So there's a lot of moving parts, and a lot of agencies are going to get to practice their response protocol. So we're really excited about that. To second what Philip said, excellent work by our officers on July 4th. And a really big thank you to Sean and his team at Public Works, and also to Shane and his team with the rec department. They're invaluable in helping us set up barricades and working long hours. Also Grant with code enforcement. Huge help to us doing the same things, helping with traffic control for the parade, and later on that night with fireworks. So it was a long day for everybody, but it is an honor for us to serve. And, you know, even though all the officers have to work that day to make it happen. A second what the mayor said, we really enjoy being out in the community. Most of our families showed up. You'll notice in the pictures there, that one kind of near the bottom, a citizen had donated a gift card to Elkhorn Pizza. So we got pizza for the team. And after the parade, all the officers that worked, their families showed up, and we were all able to have some pizza and snacks. And so that was a good time. Let's see here. The reggae concert was last week. That went pretty well. South Main, the Surf Hotel and things that help coordinate, they've been really good to work with. They've communicated well, and we've asked them to do some things to help make it safe and good experience for everyone. And they've always really helped to comply with that. So we appreciate that. And the car show was a lot of fun. I think I got there after the mayor, but we got to see a lot of cool cars, and there was an award for mayor's choice, chief of police choice, fire chief's choice, things like that. So we got to meet some really cool people.
Nice.
Yeah, there were some nice cars. I was envious of some of those. 4th of July weekend, just sampling of some of the reports. The stats from dispatch should be also included in my report. But we had 11 case reports, 48 calls for service, and then it gives a sampling of what some of those calls were. Code enforcement is going to be coming under the umbrella of the police department. And that's not too much of a change. Grant's been doing a real good job, but there's some processes that I think is just going to operate a little smoother if he's under our umbrella. And once we're in the new building, he's going to have an office there too. And we've already been working with him on different types of cases. He helps us a lot with VIII inspections. There's a big increase in those in the summertime. And there's some training and things we can give him too that I think will help him. So we're excited about that. And he's a fun guy to work with. Just a couple other things. I did get a couple grants this year. I got a grant for the police academy, and that was about $9,500. And then a grant for the high visibility enforcement, which is a DUI overtime grant where officers can work extra patrol to search for DUIs as a deterrent. And the overtime is paid by CDOT. And that was about $6,000, I think, maybe $6,400. And then I have another grant. We're waiting on the facility improvement grant, which we're hoping to get some interactive displays for the new department with that grant. We did our annual inspection on June 15th. That went really well. There's a photo of that. And then we've been asked by some local businesses to do security trainings, just the world we live in. Some people have concerns about some things they see in the news, and some of those concerns are warranted. And we definitely want to work with our community to make sure that they're communicating with us when they have concerns, or if they see something that isn't right, so that we're aware of the situation, and then that we can work with them on if something happens in or around their business, some good practices that can help keep people safe. And you can just see some of the pictures of the trainings we've been doing. And there's one up there in the corner of the police officers standing with the Red Power Ranger. That was actually a guy we met at the parade from Dallas Police Department. And he stopped by, had some pizza with us, and gave us one of his department patches, which is huge. And we gave him a couple of our patches too. So that was pretty cool to connect with a fellow officer. That's all I've got. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Chief, I do have a question, a couple of questions. Just for my education, what is VPO? It's in your reports and calls.
Oh, sorry, that's a violation of a protection order.
Okay, all right. And then I also wanted to ask you, I see under on your data below that it looks like you had 7 domestic calls of some sort. And what does that involve? Are those domestic disputes or?
Yeah, they can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so dispatch codes calls in different ways, and domestic dispute can be a variety of things. It can be an actual domestic violence involving a couple where usually one or the other person, sometimes both, go to jail. Colorado has some pretty strict laws governing that. Sometimes it turns into what we call a verbal domestic, where someone was arguing and it got escalated, and maybe a bystander or one of the participants called the police before it got out of hand. And a lot of those we just intervene and use some options to help, people make some better decisions, or maybe separate for a while and let things cool off. So that's an example of what those calls are.
Okay, thank you. And is 7 a high number for the month? Or is that-
Yeah, I would say it is. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think during COVID, I think in 2020, we had upwards of 54 for the whole year. And last year, I believe in 2021, it was down a little bit, down to 30, which is good. So 7 in 1 month would be high, but I'd have to look at what each of those individual calls was. I wouldn't think that each one of those was, a high level where there was physical abuse. Sometimes it's just an argument.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions for the chief? Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Now we have Jack Wiles, the airport manager.
Jack is out this week.
Okay, Sandra in, or are you?
I will, his report is in the packet.
Yeah.
Any questions he may have.
But you can't be airport administrator.
I've done that before.
We get you a sign, we get you another.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the questions.
Yeah, no, Chandra is covering for him this week. And so airport's in good hands. But yeah, he had an unexpected need to get out of town quickly. So
Mhm.
everything's okay, I think. But yeah, she's a great resource out there. So,
Yeah, she seems like it.
so anybody, if there are any questions related to the report, I can capture them. Back to you.
Anybody have questions on the report? No, thank you, Jack, wherever you are. Okay, good. So now we're going to move on to our business items, and Dominique Nacarado from GARNA is going to speak with us about the Chaffee County Waste Diversion Plan as it's developing.
Good evening. Trustees. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Beth Homke with Chaffee County is joining us on Zoom as well. And just to give a little bit of background for those of you that are new to the Board of Trustees, the partners in this project are GARNA, which I'm representing tonight. Some of you might know me from the intergovernmental meetings, but I'm wearing my GARNA hat tonight. Chaffee County, Town of Buena Vista, City of Salida, and Town of Concha Springs had all contributed funding that was originally budgeted to go to the Angel of Chabonneau recycling facility. And in April of 2021, Angel of Chabonneau shut their doors. And so that funding was rerouted to do some planning for waste diversion in Chaffee County. And so that's what we spent the last year doing. You do have live links on the PDF in your packet. So you click on that 2022 waste diversion plan. There you can read the full, I think it's a 37-page plan. And so just to thank some of the other people involved, BB's Dr. Erica Gift was instrumental in writing the waste diversion plan, as well as several GARNA staffers, and then all of the waste haulers, including Mickey Berry from Angel of Chabonneau Recycling, Scott Martinez from Waste Management, David Royer from Chaffee County Waste, and Chris Lyons of Shamrock Disposal Service, in addition to Julie Mock of Elements Mountain Compost. And they all helped us write this report, in addition to Glenn Egbert with Headwaters Consulting. So you can skip the next slide. I think I've got it in there twice. But why consider waste diversion? Each year we throw away the equivalent of 801 Empire State Buildings, but in an article published in the Colorado Sun, Dan Short with Chaffee County said The county's landfill has only 92 years of capacity remaining. That's based on current dumping and recycling rates. We all know our county is growing. We all know after big events like the 4th of July weekend, they generate a lot of waste. So now is the time to increase participation in waste diversion efforts, both residential and business diversion efforts, so we can extend the life of this important resource. In addition, waste diversion creates jobs and new industries. It reduces the amount of energy and raw materials we use. It reduces air, water, and soil pollution, and lowers the amount of greenhouse gases produced, and extends the life of our landfill, which from what I hear, nobody wants to have to close a landfill or open a new one. It's pretty tough work. So when we talk about waste diversion, we're really talking about those 5 activities, expanding source reduction. So asking restaurants not to give out straws, or stores not to give out single-use plastic bags. Recycling like that provided by our 3 local recyclers. Mulching and composting like that provided by Elements Mountain Compost. Returning waste to the original provider. And reusing waste that's generated within our community. And those last 2 kind of point to a circular economy. So we did 2 different surveys, one in 2021 for residents and individuals. And then in 2022, we finished with the business survey around waste. We found that we received almost 1,000 of those residential surveys, and we received 79 completed business surveys. Just over half of those businesses have been operating in Chaffee County for more than 10 years. And so here are some of the highlights from that survey. You can see we got quite a few responses from the town of BV relative to our overall response rate. We also, let's see, we found that generally businesses want to divert waste, and many go above and beyond to do so. So things like attending those free events for electronics recycling or hazardous materials recycling, paying special haulers to haul stuff away, or signing up for waste diversion services. That convenience and cost are the biggest barriers to recycling for businesses. And then a lot of businesses didn't know about Elements Mountain composting or the ability to compost. So 20% didn't know that composting was an option. And with getting the survey out there, we also had some great one-on-one with businesses. Glenn Egbert did that, consulting with businesses. We also did some data collection about what was going into our landfill, and that's the next slide. This actually comes from a preliminary waste audit in 2019. And so you can see that, how that breaks down there with C&D stands for construction and demolition. I'll point out once again that this is the year that the old BV High School was demolished. So it may be slightly high due to that, but still construction and demolition numbers are high. MSW stands for municipal solid waste, and that's just the mixture of stuff that you would put in your own trash can at home. And so we found that 30% of that is actually yard and food waste that could be composted, 21% hard to recycle items. And basically 89% of Chaffee County waste could be recycled with, yes, stop there. Next slide shows how many businesses are already diverting. So it just gives you some percentages there about how businesses are already doing that throughout the county. This is table 4 in your report, and it shows the location and percentage of businesses within each location who responded that they're already doing waste diversion practices. Listed in how willing would your business organization be to implement the following. You can see that source reduction purchasing practices is already strategy of a lot of businesses. And this is that piece where cost savings makes waste diversion easier, right? Source reduction can save businesses a lot of money and avoid unnecessary waste. So this could be a potential target when talking to businesses. For those who don't recycle, primary barriers included a lack of recycling services where the business exists. That was 24.4%, and the cost of recycling. Lack of knowledge, lack of space, and skepticism about whether recyclable materials get recycled as opposed to discarded in the landfill. Those were also factors, and suggest that education and outreach could be an effective tool. This is an important one, I think, just to state in a public meeting that we know that all 3 waste haulers are taking the recyclables to material recovery facilities on the Front Range. Both Shamrock and Chaffey County Waste take theirs to a company called Green for Life, and Waste Management has its own facility, Green for Life in Colorado Springs. One thing to note is that they are hauling all those materials to the Front Range in their packing trucks. So the same trucks that they use to collect those recyclings are the ones that are driving the materials to the Front Range, and those trucks get about $3 3 miles per gallon. We'll talk about that again in a bit. For those that don't already recycle, barriers include needing a drop-off site within their municipality, and providing a drop-off site at the Chaffey County landfill is a potential solution. A discount on trash service to participate in recycling was also a popular response, and aligns with a recommendation that we made in the waste diversion plan for volume-based pricing. Another way to say volume-based pricing is pay as you throw. You pay for what you throw away, and you pay less if you recycle it or don't pay at all. And then survey responses and then informal information collected by our staff suggested that cardboard poses one of the biggest challenges for local businesses, as well as our landfill. We hear that repeatedly from Shannon at the landfill about the amount of cardboard going into the landfill, and from businesses about the amount of cardboard that they're generating, and just not having the space to have a dumpster for that cardboard, or not being able to pay for such a dumpster. So cardboard is a problem. So going back to ways to increase diversion, people answered that a recycling drop-off site at the county landfill would be popular, but one and within the city limits of where my business is located, got an 87.5%. People said yes to that. And then a drop-off site for hazardous waste was also a really popular choice. We partnered, part of that funding, funded a hazardous materials collection event with Chaffey County last September, and it was gangbusters. The amount of stuff that people brought, we ran out of room and had to shut it down early because the company that came didn't have space to take any more stuff. So we recently started a conversation with the county about doing that again. And then almost 71% people said, of businesses said that more education and awareness on what is recyclable and where it can be recycled. Any questions so far? Trying to go quickly here. I know you have some specific concerns, so I want to get to those. So for outreach and education, we did, and we have links to all of these presentations in public schools. We hit the whole BV middle school at one time in the auditorium. That was great and well received. The students seemed authentically interested. The social influencer signage, you should have seen those at businesses around town. They say, we compost, you can too. We recycle, you can too. There's an easy QR code to find out how. We created a landfill for the handout for the stuff that they always get asked about that they can't take, but can go elsewhere in the community. And then we created that recycling guide, which is can be adjusted at any time because things change all the time with recycling. So that URL points to a page that we can change very easily. And that person-to-person interaction is something that I think is really critical, especially when we're talking about businesses. As far as education and outreach goes, to have somebody reaching out to businesses and helping to educate them in a non-shameful way, just reaching out and letting them know what the options are to help, keep your trash cans neater and cleaner and emptier, and hopefully generate less trash and find ways to divert it. So getting into some background for recommendations in the waste diversion plan. Please do take a look at that link for the Colorado Extended Producer Responsibility Bill. This was just signed by Governor Polis, and funding is going to come along in 2025, and it's going to be to reimburse government agencies for waste diversion practices that are already taking place. So it's time to look forward to that. One of our biggest recommendations is to work with the county and the municipalities to start to look at how we can get a transfer station here in Chaffey County. I talked about the packing trucks with the 3 miles per gallon driving to the Front Range. If we have a transfer station somewhere in the county, then that's a place for those packing trucks to dump everything in there, and then it can get baled. If in the case of making it into a material recovery facility like the one in Gunnison, things can get baled and brokered right from that facility and sold. That's how Gunnison handles theirs. But a transfer station is a simpler version of that, where things can get transferred from those packing trucks into a semi that gets better mileage and it's more efficient to take it to the Front Range. Volume-based pricing is that pay-as-you-throw model that I mentioned, where we're actually rewarding people for diverting waste and charging for what's actually thrown away into the landfill. So the implementation of the transfer station is the time to make that change with our waste haulers and change the way they charge for trash, making it so that we charge for trash just like we would for any other utility. You pay for what you use, basically. And then we've seen the need for continued education and outreach. So the top 4 recommendations for the plan are the reduction of construction and demolition waste. The recommended strategies for achieving that include increasing the landfill tipping or disposal fee for these materials, but of course, not jumping to that, working with construction people in the construction industry to kind of figure out how that might work first. Requiring a waste diversion plan during the permitting process, requiring all building projects funded by the public to have a waste management plan for the building, and then providing a transfer station or other location to make it easy to drop off, sort, and pick up materials. So while a transfer station is simple, it kind of creates the infrastructure base that we need for a more circular economy. We need the place to make this happen. Diverting municipal solid waste, or MSW, or household waste. The research data shows that approximately 65% of our MSW could be recycled in Chaffey County with our existing services, and 30% could be composted with expanded local infrastructure. So providing a transfer station would make this possible as well. Coupling a transfer station with volume-based pricing would make that possible. Raising landfill tipping fees to incentivize residents and business to pay for that curbside service. Working with waste haulers to offer larger recycling bins for businesses. Locating dedicated cardboard receptacles in the landfill and strategically located within each municipality, perhaps solely available for businesses, so it's easier to monitor and businesses could self-police, and perhaps paid for business revenue taxes. Support expanded commercial food composting in cooperation with Elements Mountain Compost. They are seeking a class 3 compost facility because they're starting to grow to where they need that. And then focus on opportunities for multi-unit housing and through homeowners associations to set up group recycling. Diverting special and hazardous waste, again, just having a location to do this, and or continuing with these yearly collection events in partnership with the county. But that event did cost, I think, around $35,000 last year. So could be cheaper to set up something that collects on a regular basis. And then for the administration and policy piece, it was really tough to collect data for these projects. All the haulers are collecting data in different ways. So just having some standardization across the board for how haulers are reporting data, I think would give all of us a much easier time to let the numbers tell the story. And establish a sustainability committee and advisory board within the county for tracking audits, reporting, continue to develop branding and that education that's so needed for people to know that recycling exists, recycling and composting exists, and how they do it, and that's what we do in Chaffee County. And requiring building code updates that would require construction projects to recycle cardboard, concrete, scrap metal, and clean wood, and all deconstruction projects to require the salvage of all reusables like cabinets, doors, windows, flooring, fixtures, and requiring county and municipal supported projects that generate divertible waste. And I think BV is already great at doing that with the slash clearing and mulching projects. And supporting policy that requires recycling and composting for all large events. So we did receive funding from the Visitors Bureau to do waste diversion for FIBARC and Gold Rush Days this summer. FIBARC was tough, but it was a success. We diverted about 3 tons of waste. 2 tons of that was compost, just by working with Elements Mountain Compost, and 1 ton was recycling. Recycling's lighter. It's empty cans and cups and that kind of thing. We hope to do the same at Gold Rush Days. That did require some back of house sorting of what comes into the trash. But if we have volunteers out and about monitoring those trash stations, helping people get it in the right place, then the back of house sorting is reduced. And then we're working with the Bonfire Entertainment and the Renewal Festival to do waste diversion at that event with some professional waste diverters. So GARNA is just playing a supporting role there. And I know that's a concern because the more our cities and county grow, the more events we start to have, the bigger the events get. We start to generate a lot of waste at those events. So that is it. Thank you for listening and happy to entertain any questions you have.
Can you just describe exactly what a transportation would comprise of?
Sure. It's basically just a building. Just a shell of a building where with a big enough garage door that a packing truck can pull in and dump, and then space for a bigger truck to pull in and pick up the materials that have been dumped. So a basic transfer station is really just a small amount of sorting, trusting that it's still going to go to those recyclers on the Front Range who are going to do most of their sorting at a materials recovery facility, which is kind of the next step up. Materials recovery facility has machines in there for, that blow air and use water and support things, separate things by density. And then everything gets put into its pile and is sorted before it goes anywhere. Thank you. Yeah. We're really hoping to get a grant to look at to do some planning and engineering to see if it's possible to have that at the landfill. The landfill is the most obvious choice, but it's going to take someone who is an expert in that kind of engineering to determine if it can fit there. It would be great to know if there's other properties that might fit the bill. We'd love to see Elements Class 3 compost facility nearby. We could, if we can have our unicorn, that's what we'd like.
Dominique, what's involved in is it Class 3 facility that's different than what they have now?
It's just an increased amount of permitting because they're taking in, it has to do with the volume of product.
Okay.
They're taking in. So increased permitting, just like the landfill has to go through where they're making sure toxic materials aren't leaching into the groundwater and that kind of thing.
The figure that's been bothering me is the 89% of Chaffee County waste could be recycled. That's extremely disappointing for me. And I think it should be for everyone, is that that's a serious lot that people are just not doing. And have you looked into mandatory recycling, and would that require a transfer station or anything like that, or some kind of tax on mills or something similar to that to fund some kind of serious recycling program? I've lived in a lot of places similar, from small towns to large cities, that require recycling. It's become a big issue on the East Coast because there's no more place to put trash over there. I guess thankfully we have a landfill that has room right now, but that can get out of hand very quickly. So I was just curious about that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That is the way to do it. And one way to do that is the volume-based pricing, where you make it hurt to put it in the landfill. You make it hurt in somebody's pocket to throw it away. So that just means raising the cost of trash while making recycling cheap and convenient. Yeah, and so we have everything in place that we need to do that now. I shouldn't say everything, most things in place to do that now with our three waste haulers. We just have to get them on board with doing it. And one way to get them on board is by providing them with the transfer station. Because that's going to lower their costs for hauling it.
Yeah, I think having that would be sounds like that's the great first step. And then I would seriously want to look at making it mandatory, because it's going to become an issue. And, you know, I personally don't have anywhere to put my recycling, so I stockpile it at my house and bring it to a friend's business, because that's the only place I can go. I've tried to work with my landlord and the neighbors in the main house, but it hasn't happened yet. So I know there's other people that have issues, and, you know, I've worked in places where we just throw recycling away, and it's really disappointing. So I'd really like to support anything that you can do to help make that number zero.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, you know, the town of BV does the periodic recycling collection events. I think this year we got pretty well snowed out, but I don't know how busy it was, but during cleanup, there was a household recycling event here in May. So, you know, I do wonder, and Sean, you and I can chat about this another time, but I wonder if Public Works is potentially a spot for a recycling drop-off station again, or at least that cardboard bin that we were talking about. The only other thing I was going to say is that some places in Chaffey County can't get that curbside service.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they're too remote. So, and if anybody has that problem, we do have a dumpster at GARNA. We're in Salida, our office, so that doesn't help too much, but we're happy to help if somebody can't get curbside service.
Yeah.
Call us at GARNA.
Yeah, and I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire, and our landfill was capped, and we were all, it was like early 90s, we were required to do recycling, and they built a for staging because that was the only option we could do then.
Mhm.
And so, you know, if building one transfer station, or one in here in town and one in the county, and, you know, other towns following suit, if we can do that to help the citizens here and close by, I would be in support of that if we could find a place for it here in town.
Thank you. Beth, I wanted to check in with you and see if you had anything to add.
No, thank you, Dominique. I just wanted to express our gratitude to the town of BV for being, both a operational partner as well as the fiscal partner in the Waste Diversion Plan. Gratitude to GARNA and Erica Gift for undertaking it. And I think, Dominique, you touched on the key elements, recommendations. You know, the county is now in earnest looking at the feasibility of potential properties for some sort of co-location for waste diversion, the transfer station, the materials recovery facility, and keeping an eye on that House Bill 1355 funding that we anticipate coming so that we can simultaneously plan for any capital infrastructure investments that we need to make, and then ultimately have that underwritten by the revenues that'll come in through that extended producer responsibility bill. Only other thing I would add, we do have the kickoff to the county's sustainable development plan tomorrow, actually, and the sort of waste diversion aspect will be a prominent area that will be integrated into that plan. So we'll be reaching back out to municipal partners like BV and Salida and Pancha to dig deeper into the waste diversion aspect specifically. So know that this is hopefully what will be the start of the conversation, so we can determine what's practical for us to partner on, really to implement some of these solutions versus just having identified the opportunities.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough being prepared for those House Bill 1355 funds by at least having plans in place. Not necessarily infrastructure, but at least be ready to implement infrastructure.
Only other thing I would add, Dominique mentioned the landfill as that sort of optimal location. That is something we continue to investigate. It has some initial limitations on sort of buildable footprint areas. So we continue to investigate what might be workable there. Just know that that is being considered. It gets raised pretty consistently as sort of the panacea for this, and it just has not yet sort of yielded the space that we think it would need to in order to co-locate a transfer station and class 3 facility for the composting, but we're trying to do greater due diligence in that area to really determine what might be feasible in that spot, just that mid-county where waste haulers are going already. And that partnership with the waste haulers for that volume-based pricing piece is a conversation that we need to pursue more directly. They're familiar with the concept, but we are yet to really dig into any considerations for their business models. So, would welcome any support that you would offer. Just kind of like you named, not a mandate, but more of a, hey, this really would be something that we would support for our community, given that they are private sector partners that we want to continue to deepen collaborations with, but would welcome any support that the town would be interested in offering for us to just pursue that type of arrangement with them.
Thanks, Beth.
And is it your sense that if anybody went volume-based, pretty much everyone would need to, or they'd be at a competitive disadvantage?
Yeah.
And I mean, I've kind of studied this a little bit and had some experience in the field, and it is a bit of a tough sell at times because it's very difficult to explain to people how they can actually not have to spend any more if they want to if they recycle and divert. But usually there's a fair amount of resistance on the front end. And what that's led to in some communities is illegal dumping, just because people would rather just, get rid of their trash for free. And I was going to ask Sean or whomever, who in this town usually deals with whatever illegal dumping happens. And do you see that as a concern? Not that it should be a reason we don't do it, but something to prepare for.
And I can tell you that the BLM sees plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they see, I think outside town, they probably see a lot more than we see in town.
Okay.
I think what we see is similar, but we see contamination in our recycle bins. So it's challenging to keep up with all the, responsibilities and obligations. I don't think we have time to sort through the recycle bins to clean that, and that's really frustrating. Yeah, I think we see that mostly.
I can say that totally different project, but the Envision campsite collector app and Towns and Trails app that we're developing with Envision Chaffee County will be a way to monitor that.
Okay, good.
So at least we'll have data to show what's going on.
And one of the, sorry, Dominique.
Go ahead, Beth.
The county has approved, and we're just working out the logistics for adding in sort of a free dump day so that we have the ability to offer vouchers to all residents within the county such that they can take care of any of those larger volume or problematic waste types that they might be resistant to paying for either recycling or dumping due to size, weight, what have you, so that they've got the ability to kind of come in with full amnesty and get rid of what they otherwise might be tempted to illegally dump because it's something that might be too expensive or problematic otherwise. We hope to get that out for 2022 later in the summer, and then potentially schedule, multiple opportunities, or again, with that sort of voucher model on an annual basis going forward.
Great. Thank you.
Good question. We stopped using pay as you throw because it's pretty triggering for that reaction, but pay as you throw really explains what it is.
Dominique, in the world picture, is there a market for people buying recyclables?
I would say only plastics 1 and 2. Glass, cardboard, aluminum, all day long. In fact, we have a circular economy for glass right here in Colorado. Most glass stays in Colorado, it goes to forests. Aluminum, you can reuse infinitely. In cardboard, there's lots of outlets for what to do with cardboard, lots of products being made from cardboard. Elevation Brewing starting to make their
six-pack
out of cardboard. Yeah, so there's all kinds of endless opportunities that can be used in compost. It's really useful, but plastics, not so much. Plastics 1 and 2 are really the only ones that can be recycled.
And what about the movements that have taken place in the past about grocery sacks?
Mhm.
Is there a problem with that in Colorado that we can't stop using grocery sacks?
You know, make me switch hats to my city of Salida hat because we're not a home rule city. We could not implement the grocery bag tax because of that Colorado state law. I don't remember the number of the law. But that state law changed. So cities can now implement a 10-cent bag tax for the single-use plastic bags. They're also recyclable. Right here at City Market, you can, turn them in there and they turn them into that track stacking.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump back to the cardboard bins you were talking about. Is that right? Like that seems like one of the main problems you mentioned earlier was cardboard, but also I just know for my own personal thing, it's just like recycle day is just all cardboard there. So does that seem like one of the easier fixes in terms of when the passage goes through, we get some funds to do cardboard bins, people can come drop them off?
Yeah.
What does that kind of look like?
It just entails having a space that's willing to do it.
Gotcha.
Because we all got a little bit burned by, I think that I venture to say VV maybe a little bit less because the public works area is staffed. No.
It's still a huge challenge and it's a problem.
It's a problem. So that is why people are hesitating to use the spaces because before when Angel of Chavano has a recycling facilities, there was a lot of contamination, a lot of dumping. So you really need it to be monitored somehow. And so I think that's why, potential business self-policing, maybe you get one business on board to house the dumpster and share with other businesses. And maybe it's small groups of businesses. So it's easier to self-police and ensure that the businesses who are bringing their cardboard there are being respectful because they're paying into it and they know they're going to get charged more if it's contaminated. So again, I think, hitting people in their pocket is the way to make it work. And I don't know if there's a small business alliance that gathers here in BV, but I'd certainly be willing to come and talk to a group of businesses about that.
Probably our Chamber of Commerce, we can be good to speak with.
Yep, there is a business alliance group as well. There is one, I think, here in town that we could probably connect you with, I guess.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks for all the great questions. I know I've used way more than my allotted 15 minutes. Sorry, I know what that's like.
All right, thank you for all you're doing.
Appreciate it. Let us know any way we can help.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next one might be easy. Do we have Grant on this? Or are you? Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I'm coming here before you tonight to bring a code change regarding home occupations. Currently, any violation of the terms of a home occupation permit is handled by hearing in front of you all, meaning the Board of Trustees. We are proposing removing this section and putting this violation into municipal court. This process really aligns with how we handle all code violations. It makes enforceability easier. We can just serve the notice and get them into court quickly rather than trying to schedule something in on an agenda time. It also puts the decision of how a violation is handled on off you guys as an elected body and into a municipal court, which is more apt to handle these kinds of things and has more practice in these things. Staff feels like we like this decision and not only makes sense for the Board of Trustees times, but for staff as well. I appreciate your time, consideration. Are there any questions?
Everybody understand what's being proposed? Because we have a penalty section in our code. And so any penalties here would be, they would go through the municipal court rather than through us. But then those penalties would apply.
That's correct.
Even staff
And this is only for home occupation, violation of home occupations. Just that one section.
I know our judge kind of has double duties with, I think, the county as well. Is this gonna be an increase on? No?
No, this is very rare. But yeah, so I'm looking into a potential case this year. We realized that if it were to continue to pass enforcement into an appeal or whatnot, the code directed it to the Board of Trustees, and we just felt like that was a strange process compared to all the other nuisances, how those are handled. So, yeah. So no, it's very rare when this would occur. So no impact to Judge Green. Good question. Thank you.
So the question before us is whether to pass ordinance number 23 as written, or deny it, or amend it.
I move to pass it as written.
Second.
Cobb, Lucrezi. Is there any discussion? We need a roll call on this or just, okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Ordinance number 23.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Brian, Mr. Bryans.
Have a good night.
Okay. So now we have a discussion about our recommendation for a new town administrator and the process that we've gone through to come up with a person that we'd like to nominate as our finalist. Philip?
Mayor?
Would you like to talk about this?
Sure. So we did our best here as a committee. Again, I want to make it clear, this is not your current town administrator telling you how this process is going. This is representing the committee that you all agreed to form to get the process back to the board and to the public. So in the memo, we outlined what the process has been and following along with what we said we were going to do. So the job, you can see a timeline there, how the job is advertised, the duration for that, how the process flowed for taking in applications, evaluating applications, and then eventually getting to interview process. So As mentioned before, the committee did receive 10 completed applications. And the committee met, we used a rubric to evaluate applications based on, their completeness, but then kind of digging into qualifications, skill set, some other experience related to the job, budgeting, finance, things like that. And that helped us kind of whittle it down to our top 2 to 3. And ultimately the committee picked 2 applicants to invite in for interviews. And so you can see that took place late June, early July. And we had the opportunity to conduct those interviews, that interview, and then have a follow-up interview with who the committee is ultimately bringing forward as the recommended finalist. So I'm skimming over the process really quickly. Happy to talk about that in more detail if there are questions. But it's spelled out there in your packet pretty well. So I'll turn it back to Mayor Fay.
Right.
She can fill you in on the recommendation.
Good. And the committee did a lot of talking about, different issues. We came up with all the interview questions and then in this case with this person, we had a second level of interview in which the questions were more specifically directed at her and her volition to come here to Buena Vista. I think it's a good fit for her and for us. So it is our unanimous recommendation that we negotiate and hire with Lisa Parnell Rowe as the new town administrator. She has a lot of different experience as an administrator, as a contract person, as a quality assurance. She's been a clerk, she's been a treasurer. So she's got a lot of different skills that she brings to the job. And we think that those will all be good traits for her. She also has a master's degree in public administration with a specialization in urban planning and community development, and a bachelor's degree in political science and criminal justice. She's personable, well-spoken, and poised and positive. I think when we have her, with the board's agreement, if we have her come and speak to us on the 26th, you'll get to see her in action. She thinks quickly on her feet. We've given her some pretty intense writing assignments or scenarios to work through, and she's done very well on those. So she will work hard, and let's see, we asked her intensely some questions on the second interview. Sue had put that we asked them aggressively.
That was true too.
I don't think they were quite aggressive, but they were intense. So anyway, it was good to do that with her. And she has a sincere long-term career goal of working in municipal governance. And I think that Buena Vista is a perfect size for her to take on. She's coming from Nebraska. She's worked in smaller communities there, as well as larger ones, but this will be a bigger umbrella type position for her to take on. So the committee is in full agreement that she is the right person for the job.
And just real quick, sorry, just on the process, I want to clarify that there is no action for the board to take tonight other than questions and direction if you so choose, if we want to, go in a different direction with the process. But what the committee is recommending is that Lisa come back as the finalist, present to the board in a work session, and have kind of an informal meet and greet kind of set up before the regular meeting. And that will allow you all to meet her and, you know, see her in action, as the mayor stated. And then after that point, then the board can talk in exec session and consider next steps, right? So, yeah, just want to clarify process.
And I guess I would just add that one of the things that I've come to understand is just how critical having someone who has planning and development experience as a town administrator. I just think it's a complex field, and it's kind of one of the most important issues that communities like ours face. So that I thought was a good selling point. She's really very interested in and experienced community engagement. It's something that she described a few examples of for us, things that she took out to the community, and she seems, it's a tricky territory sometimes, and I think she seemed pretty capable of handling that and kind of managing it and using it to make decisions. So I liked that. One of the questions we asked her in her second interview was, given that, say, in Philip's case, he brings all that Philip brings to this position, but specifically he had been on the board before he became town administrator. She won't have that ability. So we really pointedly asked her if she would be open to mentoring from and coaching from senior staff, any staff really, but senior staff and Philip. And she said that she would be. And the particular issues, you know, we noted, I mean, she has a really good breadth of knowledge about a lot of issues and things that are applicable to this job, but water will be a very complex subject for her. And I think some personnel decisions that she described, there might be some things she could learn from, say, Jeff or other people here, our team. And she seemed very open and willing to do that. And the one type of people I'm most wary of are people who don't think they have anything to learn. And I don't think she fits into that category. So
She kept saying that she loves to learn. So I think she's going to be really receptive to what, you know, it's going to, we'll need you to educate her on. Yeah.
don't look at it. But I think I'm very sensitive. I mean, she's visited this community a number of times. She has a home in Divide. And so she gets our area a little bit, I think. And I think, but there's still just a ton to learn, you know, compared to Hastings, Nebraska. It's just a real different landscape.
And the home that she has is a rental. I mean, she's renting it out to other people. She intends to keep doing that and to move into this community. And we felt like that was really important.
And she could begin work in August, so. Which Philip liked that a lot. I think it's important that you spoke to her about, I'm assuming housing as well, the housing in small towns and especially mountain towns and the water issues. Those are honestly, yeah, some of our biggest things. So it's good to hear that was discussed.
Yeah, and we think we have a way for her to have a place to live for, you know, for a few months while she's figuring, you know, what she can buy here.
I mean, housing is an issue.
But that's good too. Because that would probably apply potentially.
So, Cindy, got any questions?
Well, I would expect the town administrator to live in our area.
Yeah.
Over. I'm going to admit that I was a little disappointed. I thought we were going to be presented with 2 to 3 finalists, and just given one to choose from doesn't feel like I'm choosing. And I'm not questioning what you guys did, but when you're given one and you choose, there's really no choosing. So,
Yeah.
and this is a position that is appointed by the board, and there's 6 board members and we had 1 board member on the committee. So 1 board member is making the decision.
Well, there are 2. She and I were on the committee.
Oh, but you only get to do a tiebreaker vote.
I know, I
And-
feel that every time.
And I don't mean to feel, I don't mean to be difficult, but it just doesn't seem like
It
I
is,
was given a choice.
it is awkward. I agree with you.
Yes.
On the other hand, it isn't her fault that she's the only one that we're putting forth. You know, I mean, there were other people, but we don't want to waste their time or ours if we felt like they were not good choices for us.
And I'm sorry, Peter.
No, if you want to follow up.
There was one candidate that we were prepared to interview who dropped out just before his interview to pursue another opportunity. And I also think I do understand your point, and we felt it too. We talked about that an awful lot, about whether we should go back out, and that is still an option. I mean, if this doesn't.
Well, if that would be, I would take that as me being overcritical if I opposed it. And it would be wasting valuable time to go back out and get more candidates.
Well, I mean, if people aren't happy with it, then we should do that. And I mean, it might mean that we would have to, and again, I can't speak specifically to this. We might need an interim town administrator or something, but we want this to be the right decision. And so I guess what I would recommend is that everyone meet her and try to get a feel for her, and then see. I mean, it's still a decision before the board, and you should not feel pressured or like you're creating problems if it's not something you agree with. I mean, there'll be a vote, but I just feel like we should go through the process, but you should vote your conscience and not feel pressured.
I just clarification on the process. So my understanding while reading this was that there were basically 3 people who kind of made it through that initial phase, right? You had one, like 2 top 2, and then an alternate. One person dropped out to another opportunity. And so then assuming the alternate went through questions and then decided it wasn't a great fit to move forward with. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the alternate, the committee decided there was enough there that was not a fit, and therefore just did not justify just bringing in another interview just to do it. We talked quite a bit about that because we felt like, well, then it would at least give a second. However, we knew that person was not going to be local. So.
And then the other 7 were significantly
Yes.
less qualified or however we want to. Okay.
Yeah. They were not qualified. There was one we were kind of considering, but there were also a couple that were trying to leverage a job opportunity to get a raise in pay. And we learned that, from some responses that they sent in. So yeah, and then just the qualification level, dropped significantly after really the top 2.5 was right. So.
I get, I just have another question, mainly it's to Bill, but I think. So what I'm going to say, I think I need to preamble it a bit because I don't want to be but I think in every organization I've been a part of, one of the most destructive things, there's one thing I find has really been destructive in a lot of organizations I've been in, either 5 people in the organization or 200. But I think my interactions with you tell me that you're not an issue necessarily. I think your demeanor and everything's great, but this term I know is also not great, particularly gender balance here, but it's a mommy daddy problem with teams where they're like, yeah, that person said to do this, but really this person's kind of in charge. And in particular, my concern with this one applicant is, and this is not, I've heard all because I've bounced around for jobs and stuff, but that it could be a perception if she's here for a year to find another job and then move on and won't be here in the long term. So really, Phil never did things that way, but she does it this way. I'm going to kind of head this way because Phil's going to be around. She won't be. Like, that's kind of a concern I have. And I just wanted to air because it's what I've noticed organizations I've been in, it's always because people start to break into fiefdoms and they're like, yeah, I'll follow it, but really that's the person I should follow, or kind of get cues, even though there aren't cues there. And sometimes, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like that's the one concern I have, particularly with her background and resume and lack of permanent roots in the town, is that, you know, she's not necessarily coming in with gravitas with the town staff of this person's here for long term, but you're still on staff. Do you know, does that make sense?
Sure.
Maybe, I mean, it's just a concern I have. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but if you wanted to speak to it. And,
Well, yeah, I've thought about that a lot, is how to actually step out in this role. And not only for my, you know, in my daily work, but also in the leadership role. However, the treasurer is still a leader in the organization, and so I will still be involved. I think that's just something that between myself, the board, we have to watch and call it out when it seems to be a problem, because I can't predict how all of this will go, right? So, but I do recognize what you're bringing up, and I have thought about it. I think our staff is senior enough where I don't foresee it being a big problem. And you've seen a few organization changes here that I think the timing is intentional, because I'm setting it up for the next administrator. But yeah, I think our department head will recognize the change here and will respect that. And I don't foresee that from our existing staff. But yes, she will have to find her voice, or whoever the next person is will have to find their voice. And it's our role to support that and build that up. So I am part of the ultimate transition and making that effective, but I think you need your eyes on it as well. If you're picking up on, yeah, what you're describing, which I think is a very real thing, then yeah, we need to call it out.
yeah, I mean, like I said, that was, and not that I'd ever think that you'd be contradicting people or do anything along those lines or even intentional. It just often pops up. And then the fact that her resume just made it a bit more of a hyper concern looking at it. But I think, I mean, it would be a concern with anybody who would step in. Sure, for sure. Sure.
And I was part of the committee that hired this guy over here, but back in, what was that, 5 years ago? Yeah, and you know, a lot of these same questions and things have come up over the years. You know, we didn't know if hiring Philip would be a great idea because he'd never been a town administrator before, and we knew he was going to stay here, and he stayed this long. He could have left after a year, and you know, this kind of process, you are rolling the dice, and it is hard because it could be someone that walks in that is using us as a stepping stone. You know, you can't guarantee anyone's going to be here for 2 years or 5 years or 20 years. So I think it's important for me, it's important to see and meet her and see what that's like. Yeah, it is disappointing that we don't have more viable candidates and we don't have people that are local that fit the bill, but I really trust this process and I trust the committee members who, you know, collectively have decades of experience here in town and how town works and how the community is. And if they feel this is a good person unanimously, then let's check them out and see, and then we can all decide together and see what that's like. And if we get bad vibes and we want to send it back out, then that's what we do. But we also don't want Philip to be, we can give him another nameplate and add another job on for him, or, you know, 2 jobs is a lot for one person. Yeah, you're good with doing that for like 5 more years, right?
I'll say, like, I do see a lot of benefits, even if it is a stepping stone. If it's a stepping stone, you want to get a lot of wins on your belt before you go to the next thing. So that helps our town. But I'm not saying that's bad. It's not.
Yeah,
It's more of the team management.
When you look at her work history, she doesn't bounce around tremendously. You know, she's had several different jobs, but but they're not real short. The ones that worry me are the people who have lots and lots of little, 6-month jobs. And I don't see that with her. Maybe
And
more like 4 years.
I think she does have a couple of jobs that are shorter term. And she described some family issues that played into that and some promotional opportunities. And so I really would encourage you to ask her about that. We found, or I think the committee generally found her answers persuasive. Paula was also on the committee. And again, not to push anybody anywhere, but as far as of all the candidates that I felt like might be just using this position as a stepping stone, she was not one of them because of her history in the state. She's also applied for 2 other jobs in the state in rural communities, not too far from here. And so I feel like, and she's expressed an interest to retire here, in the state and not anytime soon. So in that way, I felt like actually she was a better pick than some of the folks that we were hearing from that seemed to just be casting a wide net to get to Colorado. But she was very open when we asked questions like that. And I would really encourage you to do that. And we can share, I think, some of the questions we've asked. And if it fits with something you want to know, you guys can ask too.
Don't be afraid of offending her.
Yeah.
Just whatever you want to ask. I think it's fair game. There are certain things you're not allowed to ask. But Paula, do you have anything you want to say? Comment on?
No, I just echo quite a few of the comments that were made, especially one of the things that I shared with the group when we met after the interviews was I appreciate her planner's experience. I think that's a really strong suit that we need here in town. I found her extremely professional, very presented herself well. I'm like Philip, I really think our team here at town is very, very professional, from the employees as well as the board, that we're going to keep each other in check, because I think we all want Lisa to succeed as well as the board to succeed and the employees to succeed. This is everybody's home. And yet whoever we bring in, they're going to be the newbie. But we've all been new once. We all don't know what we don't know. And we have to give her that opportunity to learn. But I echo Sue's comment. I would really hope that we give her the chance to meet all of you. And if some of the staff wants to be here, it's an open meeting, that we get to know her. She brings a lot to the table. So, and we're never going to find the ideal candidate, And one of the things she said, that filling his shoes is a tough thing. So she already realizes that. And that's, echo back. Yeah.
And one thing we also discussed, and this is, I guess, a negotiation or maybe a question for Jeff, but the possibility of a probationary period. That's not uncommon. And if it's a possibility, that maybe that will also give people some comfort, even if it meant more disruption down the road if it didn't work out.
So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Hi, I've been here all night listening carefully. I just haven't had anything to say. Everything's been going so smoothly, but you can do, it's basically a contractual position, like Phil's position. So the terms of the employment can be subject to what you put in the contract. And so if you want to make it a probationary position, you can do so, but you have to define what that really means. There's a lot of different meanings for somebody to be on probation. Typically, when you bring somebody in for a high level position like the town administrator, it's an at-will position still. They can be let go at any time, or they can leave at any time. But what you typically have in a contract for a town administrator is a payout if you let them go for anything other than misconduct or the inability to perform their job duties, because they're usually moving. And they need some kind of guarantee that they're going to be allowed to do their job and not just fired when a new board shows up, or just because they don't like them. So we certainly can have a negotiation about it. We can talk to her, but I would generally expect there to be some kind of a sort of a general payout if they're let go for any reason other than for cause. So I'm not really sure what you'd want to do as far as a probationary period.
Yeah, we might not gain anything.
Yeah. What would failure to do your job? I mean, that sounds like kind of a subjective.
Well, so we generally have like it's actually I think in Philip's contract as well, but it's basically, you know, any kind of misconduct, number one. Yeah, and then then it's basically like you're basically, you know, incapacity, you know, basically like, you know, you're something happens, you have a sickness or an accident, something like that. That's what I usually mean. If you just don't like their performance and if you're just not happy with their work, you generally have, you know, some provision for payment for being let go because they're subject to the political winds at times. But there's different provisions you can put in there, different ways of drafting that. We certainly have room to negotiate, and it's just a negotiation.
So Jeff, are you kind of saying that since it's at will, there might not be a lot to be gained by including a probationary period?
Yeah. So I mean, probationary periods generally show up in two contexts. When it's not at will. So you know, you're basically saying, well, the position is not at will. You can only be terminated for cause. But for the first 6 months is probationary, and you can be determined. You can be let go at will. That's your first way of doing it, and that's generally not applicable. The other way is that people who are not in a probationary period, in some jurisdictions, in some employment situations, they have a right to an appeal if they're terminated or disciplined, you know, those kinds of things. And you say during a probationary period, you don't have that right. You're just let go. You don't have an appeal right. And in this situation, it doesn't really apply because it's going to be at will no matter what. And there's not going to be an appeal because you're the ultimate supervisor. So I don't think it would really apply.
Okay, that's helpful.
You're welcome. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
Another thing we didn't mention is that we did check references on her, and those were all very good. And Dean did a background check and nothing out there.
So
I won't be here on the 26th. I will try to dial in if possible, but that will probably be a long shot. So, but I echo a lot of the comments. I do have a lot of trust and faith in the people that have the committee and the team that went into, you know, putting all that together. And I agree with Cindy. It would have been nice to have more than one person but you guys recognize that as well. But I do put a lot of trust into what you've done and people on the committee. I wish I had the opportunity to meet her in person, but I will probably ping everybody or at least some of you to get your thoughts, probably non-committee members just for different, just to hear their thoughts. But so I appreciate the work you guys did. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and also like that, I mean, I had my concerns, so I just wanted to raise it, but I also recognize where you did the outreach to try to find applicants and did cast a wide net in all the right areas for the people who would be interested in this kind of job. But I do worry that if we keep it open or we try to open it back up again to get more applicants, I'm not sure we're going to get a whole lot more. So I recognize that you guys are very thorough in the process and want to move forward. Then I don't know if holding just so we have another or a few more people to have in front of us is necessarily going to generate a whole lot of any more resumes that just weren't out there beforehand.
Yeah. And Peter, that kind of mirrors the discussion we've had. It's kind of like, we don't want to just take one candidate because we have it, but we really, really wished we could have more candidates. But on the other hand, we could go, you know, look far and wide for someone as qualified as she is, seemingly anyway, and you guys can be the judge of that as well, and not find that person, not find someone even as good as she is.
And we'd lose her in the process.
And
most likely.
And not it's not a scare tactic, but it did come up that Cripple Creek took 2 years to find. Yeah.
Wow.
They concluded a 2-year process this spring, I think it was, right?
She was one of the finalists, but she withdrew.
But yeah, I think they struggled to find applicants for a while and then finally got 3 good ones. And good for them, but that's a long time. We talk about damage to an organization.
So just that question, would it be inappropriate for any of us to contact her in person? I mean, you know, like if Gina wanted to ask her a question. Is it inappropriate for her to contact the
To
candidate?
reach out directly. I'll let Jeff weigh in on that. I'm not.
He's ready.
So it's not like inappropriate. My only concern is that when you're talking to an employee candidate, you know, there are questions that are, you know, permissible topics of conversation that are, you know, can be problematic. And I generally think it's better to do it as a group, you know, and I think you probably should reserve your questions for the public meeting where you're planning on having it. So everything's transparent. There's no, you know, misunderstandings or anything that somebody can say, when I talk to this trustee, they asked this and this trustee asked that, and there's no real record of it. I think it's better to keep that to a group situation.
So if trustee Lucrezi has a particular question, you could give it to us.
Right.
You know, and then somebody will ask it at the work session.
That'd be fine. That'd be helpful.
You need a motion or just kind of a, hey, I support moving forward with the.
Yeah,
these recommendations.
Motion is always great. I should say that's always welcome, but yeah, essentially we're just looking for direction and just inviting her back and having this work session as a meet and greet. Is that what the board would like to do?
And as part of that motion, I basically recommend that you sort of declare her to be the finalist at this point. You can always change things later, but that way there's some deadlines that run from the date that there's an actual finalist declared. And that way we can be clear that it's tonight.
Okay, is there a motion?
I guess I'll make a motion. Make a motion to agree with the committee's recommendation with finalist candidate Lisa Parnell Rowe and have her attend the July 26th regular meeting to provide an introduction and presentation to the Board of Trustees. That sound okay?
Yeah.
Anything else?
Someone should note that it's the work session.
Oh, the work session, yeah. That's what I said.
You get that, Paula?
Yep.
Is there a second?
All the edits.
I'll second.
Thank you. So there's Rowe and Hilton Hinga.
And I guess I just wanted to also just thank everybody on the search committee. This process came at a time when some people were going to CML and handling all their routine duties, the transition with Philip and Michelle, her departure and Philip transitioning into that was going on. And the chief has a ton of additional duties. Chief Morgan was on the committee and his shop is overextended at this point. So I feel like people really stepped up for all these meetings and considerations and ranking of candidates. And I just want to thank everybody. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for clarification, we're not hiring her right now. We're just continuing the process and inviting her here, just for
a meeting
record.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll look forward to seeing Lisa Parnell Rowe here on the 26th. And the public is invited, right?
Yes.
So anybody can come to the work session. It'll be at 6 o'clock 2 weeks from now. Here in this room, the opinion room.
Be full. And maybe the newspaper can help us get the word out. It'll be in there. All right.
Good job.
Okay, now this next one should be quick too. Philip, is this yours?
It is. This is a quick one, but I'll still explain it. So we have an intergovernmental agreement with the school district. When in 2018, we created the School Resource Officer Program, which was a joint effort where we split the cost of that officer and split the responsibility of monitoring the program, evaluating the program, making changes. So the IGA, which is in your packet for reference from 2018, we look at at least on an annual basis. We're mainly focused on performance and priorities, right? So our police department is ultimately responsible for the human resources part of it, but we take input from the principals, superintendent, and we do that usually about 2 times a year at the leading up to the upcoming school year and then concluding the school year. So a lot goes into that role, and the point of tonight really is we sat down and did our review and determined that, oh, wait a minute, this IGA doesn't have an auto renewal. It's technically it's expired. So a little housekeeping here. We're not making any major changes to it other than adding in the option to auto renewal. And of course, we can also, there's provisions on how to get out of the agreement if and when the town needs to do that. But we believe this is a very effective and great program for our community, and both sides agree that we want to continue. So before you tonight is a resolution to make the first amendment, adding in that auto renewal each year, I think starting in 2023. So any questions?
Is this a standard practice for this type of program? Is that how it works in other schools and other municipalities?
In terms of splitting up the cost?
Yeah, in terms of splitting up the cost.
We've seen that fluctuate. I would just say one of the common ones we look at is Salida because they're so close and there's opportunities to see what works, doesn't work. And they've kind of changed over the years with theirs, where sometimes the budget was pushed back to the city and then gone back to splitting it. We feel like it keeps both parties engaged. And I'm not sure in general how most of these agreements, maybe Jeff has seen some others, he can speak to that, but I feel like it's very important that we continue to split the cost of this. Again, because it kind of keeps both parties owning it. And but Jeff, do you have any other experience?
Yeah, we've done so many of these that I honestly can't recall exactly how the costs get allocated to them all. I think they're all, generally dependent upon the relationship between the school district and the police department and the municipality. But I think cost sharing is relatively common.
Good chief raises hand too. Very good. I lowered it.
No, I got my hand up still, if that's okay.
Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah, just real quick, I did do some research. I have a buddy that works for Douglas County. He's in charge of their school resource officer program. It's a really big one. And it's very similar there. It's a 50-50 cost sharing, which we all feel is important, that the police are partnering with the school, and then the school has buy-in as well to partner with the police.
Thank you. Okay, any further discussion on that? All right, are you ready to have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 54, series 2022.
Second. Lucrezi, Cobb. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, we have reached the point of trustee staff interaction. So, Kevin, got anything?
I just, I like the public comment was at 80 Gerwood.
Garwood, Kate.
I couldn't really see it, but yeah, I think transportation is a huge thing that could really help our community, and partnering with the county and other municipalities. I think it could really provide an awesome service. You know, I know from personal experience, I have a friend that I was hanging out with today who lives up at the Monarch Lodge in Garfield, and him and his partner share a car. So he's been having a super hard time finding employment because of that. And there's no way to get out of Garfield, you know, so it's way up there. So I think any way we can support our community with transportation, I think is connected to a lot of, you know, affordable housing, having workers, a lot of things. So I don't know if that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Sue? I didn't really have anything, but just following on what Devin, said, is it worth having a fuller presentation from her?
Yeah, we were just kind of teeing it up tonight.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, do we think that's a work session, you know, on transportation?
Probably, just because it's so, yeah, I don't think there's a focused discussion or like a decision or anything. So it's probably a good work session.
There's a lot to be learned about those surveys, what the options are.
Grants or whatnot for them to have more services and whatnot.
Yeah, they really are adding a lot of services with that shuttle. It just doesn't seem to time up really well with the needs of employees. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, if you work in a kitchen and they don't close till 11, like
Shuttle stops at 4.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Gina?
Nothing really, but if anybody's thinking of it on next Friday, send me some speedy vibes. I'll be running 100 miles in the Cascade Mountains in Washington, so I'll be over probably 24 hours, so any positive vibes, send my way.
Yeah, good luck.
And that's, and then I have a long trip back, and that's why I'll probably potentially miss the meeting, but I'll do my very best to hop on Zoom.
You won't be running behind the car.
No, but we'll be traveling back and kind of taking our time a little bit. It just depends on reception and things like that. I don't know. We'll spend money on hotels to get out there, but the way that I think we might camp. So it's just, I'll do my best. Anyhow, so.
Peter?
Yeah, I just want to kind of give a readout from the beautification meeting, and Paula, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of these things. But you know, one of the things we kind of talked about is preparing for getting ready for requests for the 2023 budget. I know we'll be going over, so I'm jumping ahead a little bit for 2 weeks from now, but they also, you know, asked if anybody, like I'll give a readout of what the priorities are going to be next year. And if there are members of the board, if they have thoughts on that they maybe want to include and they could think about while they're thinking about proposals. But one is they're going to be asking for help with the signs, trying to have a unified coloring of signs for all of our parks and stuff along those lines, similar to the McPhilmy. So it's the, you know, blue and white with the town logo on top, and trying to have a uniform look on that. And another main one is that median on Charles Street. And that's kind of the big project that the committee wants to take on. And for those who aren't aware of that, it's that median kind of across from Casa Sanchez, and has the post for what would be a sign that used to be a sign, and it's now kind of all that, but trying to figure out what to do with that, and how to make, like, you know, I mentioned this in the last meeting, but how to make the highway, they focused on the beautification in the town previously, and like on Main Street, now they're kind of focusing on the highway, and that's kind of the first target. So I hope I caught everything, but that's kind of
everything.
Okay. If there's any other thoughts that folks would like that I could then bring back or on as well, to they would kind of like to see maybe focused on it. Great. So then if there's any thoughts.
Great.
I have a couple things. Mine is on the tree board. The Public Works Department, it's been since I've been on the board. Their employees are paid a base rate and then they get a certain increase with their certifications. And I know that Sean will be talking to you about it because we discussed it, but having trouble keeping qualified parks people, and maybe we might, when we're doing the new budget, consider their certifications, if they're capable of their certifications for like trimming trees, so we don't have to pay an outside source. So maybe for the parks people, we might want to do small increases to their base wage based on their qualifications and certifications. And I know that I'm picky. I've been driving through town and there's a few businesses on the highway that are really and weed control. I'll go ahead and say it. The post office looks horrible. And I don't know if anybody is living there right now or not, but Pinion Court next to Ponchos is really not very attractive. And I know that they're breaking ordinance, but I don't know if there's people there that they can tell them they need to do something. That's
That could be a code enforcement.
Pardon me?
It could be a code enforcement question.
Yeah.
You know.
You know, and I know I'm gonna give it with, we've had recent rains, so the people that don't attempt to control their weeds are getting pretty tall now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have anything,
okay. Hello?
nothing.
Okay. We have this training coming up with the emergency response group, and Buena Vista has its own plan as part of that. And if you have a copy of that plan, it would be good to take a look at it before this second session.
I'll make that motion. I promise I have.
Yeah.
Search and rescue.
Yeah.
I've put that up to use a lot lately, actually. 4th of July, I was walking around the woods. I heard everything on the radio and the police force was busy. Poor guys.
Do we have access to that plan, even if we didn't attend the first one?
Is it online?
Sorry, I'm drawing.
It's on a town
Which
website.
plan are we talking about?
The emergency response plan,
Yes.
Buena Vista's plan.
Yeah. We did a link
Gotta
down to
get it
that.
off of the town website, I think. So we are planning to have an executive session. And I will be looking for a motion to open that executive session. It will be an executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, develop a strategy for negotiations and/or instruct negotiators pursuant to Colorado Revised Statutes 24-6-402 parentheses 4 parentheses E concerning the potential acquisition of water rights. Is there a motion for that executive session?
I have a question. Do we have to do anything with that Tom Rollins or the BV stands with Ukraine before we get out of this meeting?
Those are in our packet.
Do we need to do anything with them? Or
So the Tom Rawlings was, for your information.
a big thank you.
Thank you.
You put in another 20,000.
I love the
I mean-
move there. That's
It was pretty cool.
yes.
And the tagline, Touch too.
Yeah.
The other one, Paula, do you want to speak to that?
The other one, as we know, Norma Caddy is our person who has championed the bench for Ukraine and things. And so she just wants to always keep the board up to date where she is on that project. And that's what she submitted for the board packet this round.
Good. Sounds like they're making progress towards the bench.
They are making progress.
Very good.
Okay, I apologize.
No, that's no problem.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, so we have Lucrezi and Cobb. And we will have this executive session with the mayor, trustees, Cobb, Hilton, Henga, Mark Jenkins. No, he's not here. Okay, Gina Lucrezi, Devin Rowe, and Cindy Swisher, Administrator Puckett, Special Projects Manager Benson, and Attorney Jeff Park. And we could take a little break before we go into it.
Can you call for a motion just for the record? There was a motion and second, so just call for a vote.
Oh, well, okay, yeah. All in favor of going into the executive session?
Aye.
Any opposed? We can take a 5-minute break and then enter our executive session.
You too.